Now we are going to switch gears. We have been focusing on past tense for quite a bit. Now it's time to talk about commands. If there's one element of a language that we use every day, it's commands. Let's find out how to do them in Spanish. Let's start with a bit of review. Perhaps in your last Spanish class, you talked about how to do formal commands. These are commands that you would direct to someone that you would use the usted form with, or a group of people who you would address with ustedes. You have heard these in the classrooms. It's what we instructors have used when asking you to do things as a class. Traigan, lean, escriban, no usen, no hablen. You know these. So, how do you form the commands? First, take the yo form of the verb. For example, from leer, we start with leo. From dormir, we start with duermo. And hablar, we start with hablo. Next, take off the O at the end, and you have the root. Le, duerm, hable. The next step is to add the opposite vowel. That means AR verbs will add an E at the end of the command root, while ER and IR verbs add an A at the end of the command root. So, leer will become lea for usted and lean for ustedes. Dormir will become duerma and duerman. And hablar will become hable and hablen. By starting with the yo form, we don't have to worry about any irregularities in the command form. There's nothing special that we have to do. Also, both positive commands, as in do this, and negative commands, as in don't do that, in the usted and ustedes forms are exactly the same. No change is necessary. Simply put a no in front of a command when you want to tell someone not do something. For example, decir is diga or digan, and no diga, no digan for the negative. Hacer would be haga, hagan, and no haga, no hagan. Poner would be ponga, pongan, and no ponga, no pongan. Salir would be salga, salgan, and no salga, no salgan. Tener would be tenga, tengan, and no tenga, no tengan. And venir would be venga, vengan, and no venga, no vengan. There are 5 verbs that don't end in an O in the yo form, so they do have slightly different command forms. Ir turns to vaya and vayan. Ser turns to sea, sean. Saber turns to sepa and sepan. Estar turns to esté, estén. And dar turns to de or den. As straightforward as formal commands are, informal commands aren't quite so straightforward. Positive and negative commands are formed in different manners. Let's start with negative commands, since it's exactly the same process as formal commands. Start with the yo form, take off the final O, and add the opposite vowel. But this time, you'll also add an S after that vowel. This makes sense if we think about all the tu forms in the present tense ending in an S. So leer would be no leas, dormir would be no duermas, hablar would be no hables. And you can see these in the examples of how they are used in an utterance. Affirmative commands or positive commands are very easy but very different. You simply use the third person singular of the verb. So, leer would be lee, dormir would be duerme, and hablar would be habla. and here are some examples of how they are used in an utterance. As you would expect, there are some irregular verbs in these informal positive commands. The negative commands, well, they're exactly the same irregulars as the formal commands. The only difference is you add an S at the end. Affirmative commands, they have a list of irregular verbs. Decir es di, hacer es has, ir es ve, and frequently you'll be using the verb as its reflexive form, irse. Poner es pon, salir es sal, tener es ten, and venir es ven. Finally, let's talk about object pronouns. Direct object pronouns, indirect object pronouns, and reflexive pronouns. No matter if we're talking formal or informal commands, the rules are the same. Affirmative commands, the pronoun always goes attached at the end of the command. So we would say, léelos, Marcos. Háblele, abuela. Tráigame los estudiantes. Negative commands, the pronouns are always in front of the command, just like they are with normal declarative sentences. So we would say, no lo leas, Marcos. No le hable, abuela. No me los traigan, estudiantes. When we study the subjunctive, some of these forms will seem familiar to you. There is a reason for that, a reason that will be revealed in the subjunctive weirdo video.